All right, folks, good morning. All right, let's get started here. For today, January the 8th, we have the following economic data. Wednesday, January 8th. First of all, at 8 a.m., we had FOMC member Waller speaking. 8:15 a.m., we had ADP non-farm employment change, which came in worse than expected. And at 8:30, we had unemployment claims, which came in better than expected. At 10 a.m., we'll have final wholesale inventories month over month, which is not an important report. Then at 1:01 p.m., we'll have the 30-year bond auction, which is not expected to have significant impact. But at 2 p.m., we'll have the FOMC meeting minutes, which is a very important report, and we can expect substantial volatility from that. Then at 3 p.m., we'll have consumer credit month over month, which is not important. So basically, we've had all of the major reports that were happening in the morning already released. And then at 2 p.m., we'll have the FOMC minutes. All right, taking a look at the markets, here's what we find. So looking at the QQQ ETF, it was clearly bearish yesterday, substantially bearish. And right now it looks like the market is going to open very close to where it closed yesterday. As far as trading opportunities are concerned, we did find a few. One of those was Moderna. Moderna was able to reach our target number 2 to the upside of 46.76 and then go beyond that. So that was a great opportunity that we were able to exploit yesterday. Google, this one was not able to reach our target number 2 to the upside. In fact, it reversed on us, so we didn't see any profitability from that. Then we had Amazon, which was able to move downwards, eventually reached our target number 2 to the downside, but that took a very long time, and we should have been out of that trade long before then. But we were able to catch it from target number 1, move the target number 1, and also some part of target number 2 for some of us. Okay, so this was a good opportunity as well. All right, so there were some other stocks which were moving, but these were the ones that we were able to identify at the appropriate time. Looking at the pre-market session, here's what we have so far. All right, first up we have ABSI, which is currently up 35, well, let's say 34% on 29 million shares. It's trading at least $1 per share, so we'll go ahead and add that to our pre-market watch list. The symbol, again, is ABSI. All right, next up is AMPG, which is presently down about 32% on 2.3 million shares roughly. It's at least $1 per share, so we'll add AMPG to the radar. Next up is ARBE, which is presently up 3.72% on 11.2 million shares. So it's not up enough, so we'll have to pass on that one. Next up is CURR. Okay, that one's currently up about 110% on about 40 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add CURR to the pre-market list. Next up is DATS. This had a very strong performance yesterday. Currently down 53% on 2.4 million shares, at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add DATS to the radar. Next up is HOTH, HOTH, which is currently down 25% on about 2 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share. So we'll add HOTH to the pre-market watch list. Next up is INVZ, which is presently down 6.36% on 2.7 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add INVZ to the pre-market list. Next up is Next up is LAES, presently down about 26% on about 19 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add that to our radar. Next up is LCID. That's presently not down enough, so I'll pass on that. Next up is NITO. That's up only 3.6%, so not up enough, so we'll skip that. Next up is NLSP, which is presently up about 21% on 13.7 million shares, at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add NLSP to our pre-market list. Next up is ONDS, which is presently up not enough. It's up about 3%, so we'll have to pass on that. Next up is PLTR. That's down 2%, so we'll have to pass on that. Next up is Plug Power. Okay, not enough there. Next up is QUBT, which is presently down about 28% on about 5 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share, so we'll go ahead and add that to our pre-market watch list. Next up is REKR, which is presently down about 11% on 2 million shares. It's at least $1 per share. So we'll go ahead and add REKR to our pre-market list. Next up is RGTI, which is presently down 26% on 25 million shares. It's at least $1 per share, so we'll go ahead and add RGTI to our pre-market list. Next up is RZLV, which is presently down about 11%, on about 3.7 million shares, at least $1 per share, so we can add RZLV to the radar. Next up is SANA, which is presently up over 280%, 27 million shares traded, it's at least $1 per share, so we can add that to our list, SANA. Let me see something here. Clinical trials is why it's up. Okay. All right. Next up is SILO, which is currently up 90% on 17.8 million shares roughly. It's at least $1 per share. So we can go ahead and add SILO, SILO, to the pre-market radar. Next up is SoundHound. I don't think it's moved enough. I did. Okay. It's down 7% roughly on 2.9 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share, so we'll add SOUN to the pre-market list. All right, next up is SXTP, which is presently not up enough. It's only up 3.57%, well off of its highs, so we'll have to pass on that. Next up is WIMI. That's currently down 20% on 2 million shares. It's at least $1 per share, so we'll add that WIMI to the pre-market list. And next up is WLDS, which is presently down 14.5% on 1.4 million shares, and it's at least $1 per share. We'll go ahead and add WLDS to the radar. All right, so that's all the stocks that I see. If you folks see any other stocks other than the ones that are already mentioned, meeting all 4 of our criteria, let me know in the chat. 4 criteria are: must be a NASDAQ listed stock trading at least $1 per share in this present pre-market session. Must have achieved at least a 6% price change, positive or negative. Um, at least 1 million shares of pre-market volume. CRN is mentioned. CRN does not look like a NASDAQ listed stock, so we'll skip that. VIR is mentioned. That's currently up 62% on 5.9 million shares. It's at least $1 per share. We'll go ahead and add that VIR to the pre-market watch list. SLDB, that's currently up 10.97% on 1.1 million shares, at least $1 per share, so we can add that to our list. Symbol is SLDB. Next up is CRNC, as mentioned. That does not have the volume requirement. It has 600,000 shares, so that doesn't qualify. We need at least 1 million shares of pre-market volume. Next up is JSPR, which is presently down 49.75% on 1.2 million shares and at least $1 per share. So we can add that JSPR to our pre-market list. I think we already have DATS. Yeah, we do. We already have DATS. Okay, so if we see any other stocks that meet all 4 of our criteria, let me know in the chat. Must be a NASDAQ listed stock. Must be trading in this current pre-market session. When we look at the pre-market trading, we must see that the stock is already trading at least $1 per share in price. It must also have achieved at least 1 million shares of pre-market volume, and its percent change must be at least 6% positive or negative. ALTM is mentioned. Maybe that's a typo. ALTM does not look like it's showing up anywhere as a NASDAQ stock, so that's the NYSE stock, that's why. All right, so if you see any other stocks that meet all 4 of our criteria, let me know in the chat. All right, we'll give it another 30 seconds and then we'll have to wrap up. All right, so we're going to wrap up for today. Please be sure to like the video. See, we have 8 likes, but more than 8 people watching, so please be sure to hit the like button. That greatly helps us with the YouTube algorithm. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you get notifications when we publish a new video. And if anyone is watching this video on a replay and you're not familiar with our company, please check out fundertrading.com, our website. You will see a link in the description to this video. Other than that, for everyone part of the coaching program, I'll see you there in about 20 minutes, and we'll pick up for today's session. Other than that, folks, have a great trading day, and I'll see you for tomorrow's pre-market pulse. Take care.